Oh, hello YouTube. Today in the Naughty Librarian, I am continuing my Vampire Chronicles journey, and I read Pandora by Anne Rice. This is kind of like a side quest to the whole Vampire Chronicles series, where basically it's just kind of like an origin story of the vampire Pandora. We met her for the first time in Queen of the Damned. She was made by Marius. It's a whole thing. We're kind of getting her backstory. So overall, it's kind of like a short story. Well, short for Anne Rice. It's supposed to be like a novella, but like this is a full-length novel. It's pretty long. But for Anne Rice, it's a novella. And yeah, this is her backstory. So let's get into what happened during Pandora. It's kind of a fun ride. Let's go. Okay, so Pandora starts off, technically the present part of it is right after Memnoch the Devil. And in this time, David went to visit Pandora because she was in Paris, and he was like following her around, and basically he wants her to write down her story for him because he's trying to learn more about vampires and the nature of vampires, etc. You know, he's a scholar. And she doesn't really want to do it, but he's just like, please. And she's like, ugh, fine, okay. And so he gives her like these 2 notebooks, and he's like, all right, I'll be back in 2 days. And Pandora just starts writing down her origin story. Pandora, she was born in 15 BCE, so old, long ass time ago, before the Common Era. So 15 BCE. She was in a Roman patrician family, so she was like Roman nobility. So she's very educated. She's a little spitfire. Her dad like loves her. She's like the youngest child and the most spoiled a little bit. Like the dad just thinks she's a little spitfire and likes how like feisty she is and like smart and all that jazz. She has like a pretty normal childhood. Pandora first meets Marius when she's about 10 and he's about 25-ish. And he's not a vampire yet. He's still just a normal guy. He's a scholar wandering about, and you know, Pandora's off being a little smarty pants spitfire kind of kid. And Marius is like, I like this kid. Hey, Pandora's dad, can I marry her? And it's like, sir, you are 25 years old. What are you doing? She's 10. Yikes. They weren't marrying 10-year-olds even in the Roman era. That's not what they did. I think you had to be like at least 14 or so to be eligible for marriage. I'm like, this is a 10-year-old. Anyways, the dad says no. Obviously, she's 10, and there's nothing else really happens. He just kind of leaves, and they leave it at that. And they don't cross each other's paths again for like another 5 years. Now Pandora is 15, and she's still a little spitfire, but now she's like eligible for marriage, and she sees Marius again, and she's like, sup, Marius? And he's like, hey. And then her dad's like, no, he wanted to marry you when you were 10, and also like, fuck Marius. No, you're not marrying him. Like the dad shuts that down. Nope, not happening. So since she never marries Marius, she just goes on with her life, and eventually Pandora does get married. I think she goes through like 2 different husbands, so she's been married a couple times. Each time she wasn't able to have children, so the marriages were eventually just dissolved. And now that takes us to the time where Pandora is about 35 years old, and she's just like, you know, I'm done with marriage and all that shit. Like, I'm just gonna stay home and like take care of my dad because he's older now. Like, I'm just gonna take care of my dad. So that's what Pandora's doing. So there you go. From like born to 35, not a lot of events. Mind you, this is ancient Rome. A lot of this is kind of fit in with history to make it make sense. So I might get some facts wrong because I'm not a scholar for ancient Roman society, but I'm gonna try my best. So one day, the Emperor Tiberius, who frankly has tiny dick energy, he's just really paranoid about everybody coming to get him. Although in this era, like the most easy way to become emperor was to kill the last one. So like I get it in a bit, but he just decides one day that all of these senators had committed treason for like this imagined slight and possibly showing any favor or loyalty to Germanicus, who was his literal heir. So he's like, these motherfuckers gotta die. So he puts out hits on all of these senators and their entire families, like everybody in the family, children included. So Pandora's family, obviously on the hit list. Her father's a senator. Pandora comes home and she's like, what the fuck is going on? And her dad's like, I organized it. I got my buddy and I got all your shit together, and you're going on a ship with my friend. You're getting out of here. I'm saving your life. So it's a whole thing where he gets Pandora out of the country while, you know, the literal soldiers, the legionnaires, are like beating down his door, and he kind of goes out in like, you know, a big blaze of glory. Like he kills a bunch of dudes. Like he's still like a soldier, which is like kind of a badass scene. But, you know, Pandora is very sad. Like her dad was like her whole life at this point, and now he saved her life, but now she's off on her own with these two strangers who are very trusted friends of her father. And mind you, this goes well. Like these two guys, it's David and Jacob, and they're Jewish merchants, and they are actually loyal to her father. And like they help her a lot. They don't steal anything from her. Like they're good guys, actually. So I'm like, this works out. So she gets on their boat, and she's leaving the country, and she's like all like horrified. She doesn't really know what to be doing. She just knows, like, I'm on a boat now. So the plan is they're going to take Pandora to Antioch, which is far enough away, and it's like a Germanicus stronghold. So they're like, you'll be safe here. We'll get you a house and like everything. You got all this money. You got like an ass ton of money. You're good. So they take her to Antioch, but she gets there like at the worst time possible because Tiberius just had Germanicus assassinated, and everybody in Antioch really liked Germanicus. Like the city is in chaos. So yikes. One like frying pan fire, you know? She just like can't catch a break here. And also at this time, Pandora has been having all these really disturbing, elaborate dreams about the goddess Isis, because she was a devoted follower of Isis, and she keeps seeing Isis in her dreams being like imprisoned, and people are trying to harm her, and Isis has been calling her, that kind of thing. Obviously, we know, and like, you know, later on it gets revealed that this is obviously Enkill and Akasha. Akasha's been calling out to her telepathically, so she keeps seeing all of these like memories and images and stuff that Akasha is sending her. And in these dreams too, she's also been like thirsting for blood and drinking blood in her dreams, and she wakes up and she still wants to have blood, and she's freaked out about it. So yeah, she's been having really, really disturbing dreams, and this is like kind of the main point of the story, that Akasha has been like connected to her. But moving forward, she's in Antioch. She ends up getting like a nice little house, like a fancy house, and all of her money is there, and like David and Jacob help her move in and everything, and they're like, we gotta go, we got more like merchant runs to do. So they just kind of leave her, and she's just alone in this giant house with all of her like jewels, and she's like, I don't know what to do. So she's like, all right, I gotta put my big girl toga on and get like some household servants. She needs to go find some slaves to run her house. Yes, she is enslaving people. However, she just treats them more as servants. So we're gonna move past that, but like, yikes, you know, yikes here. She buys these two young girls, Mia and Leah. They're gonna be like her like ladies' maids, handmaidens and stuff. And she also buys this man named Flavius, and she loves Flavius. He's a scholar, and he's missing a leg, but he has an artificial leg made of like ivory, and it's really fancy. So obviously he was already an enslaved person before, and the previous person who enslaved him obviously very much cared for him and took care of him and had this ivory leg fashioned for him. He's very high up. She and Flavius have this like really deep friendship, which I enjoy, even though technically, yes, he is enslaved. Like, there's a lot of problematic things here. Now that she has a household staff, she has to, you know, reacquaint herself with the city. She's like, okay, let's go look around Antioch, see what's up. I'm a scholar, maybe I'll go find some more scholars. And she's walking around, she's like, oh shit, it's a temple of Isis. I'm an initiate of Isis. I'm gonna go hang out with them. So she goes to the temple, and she starts telling the priestess, like, hey, I'm having these crazy dreams about Isis, and this is what's happening. Blood drinking, she's in trouble, etc. All this kind of stuff. And they're all like freaked out about it, and they're like, hey, listen, you should come and see the high priest and tell him about it, because like, for real, you gotta talk to this guy. And she's like, okay, let's go. And he's like, oh, he's not here right now. You have to come back later. So she's like, ugh, fine. So she leaves. She's gonna come back later and talk to the high priest. But when she leaves the temple, she runs into her brother Lucius. And this is her youngest brother. And he's kind of an asshole. And she's like, how the fuck did you get out of Rome? Oh my gosh. She's like happy to see him at first. And then she starts realizing right away, he's not happy to see her. Oh my gosh, fucking Lucius is the one who sold out the family because he was like jealous of the older brother. So he sold out the family. He got like all of the immediate family killed, plus all of their spouses and their children. All of them. And Lucius, he even left his own wife and children there to die. Like, Lucius is a piece of shit. No one likes Lucius. And obviously, now that Pandora's there, his secret is not so secret anymore. So he's like, I'm gonna have to kill Pandora. And she's like, oh shit, he's gonna try to kill me. So, like, she has problems, but she can't do anything about it right now. And so she just goes back to the temple because she's like, okay, I gotta go see this high priest and tell him about my freaky dreams. The priest hears her like dreams and he's like, listen, this is kind of spot on to some shit that's going on in town because like, hey, guess what? There is this beef jerky looking burnt up blood drinker on the loose and he's killing people and leaving them on the doorstep every night. It's a real fucking problem, and I'm pretty sure your dreams are connected to that. So, like, hey, this is a thing. Like, you know what? We have this scholar around, and you should talk to him too, because, like, he's helping with this. And this scholar there is a really tall guy in this hooded shroud, and he seems to be speaking telepathically with Pandora. And Pandora is like not putting up with anybody's bullshit. She's like, what the fuck? Get out of my brain. Like, just use your words through your lips, sir. Like, she just like, no, she's not dealing with any of this bullshit. The people at the temple, they're like, please stay in the temple. Your brother's trying to kill you. You're having crazy dreams. I think you're here to help us stop the beef jerky vampire from killing more people. Come stay at the temple. And she's like, no, I got shit to do today. So she leaves, and the second she leaves the temple, guess who's outside? Fucking Lucius, and he brought like a bunch of legionnaires, and he's like, oh, she did it, she's a bad guy, oh, they were trying to kill her in Rome, she escaped, just being a little fucking tattletelling bitch. Lucius, he just keeps going on about how like the Emperor Tiberius wanted her family killed for treason and blah blah blah, and like Pandora sees her in right here. She's like, bitch, this is Antioch. Ain't nobody like Tiberius. So she's like, hey legates, what's up? She starts talking to like the soldiers and she's like, oh my gosh, were you in the campaign? And she knows all about these military campaigns that like Germanicus led. And she's like, oh, I knew the old emperor before Tiberius who was like super cool. And like, so she just makes friends with all of the soldiers like immediately because she's like, yeah, oh my gosh, did you hear that Tiberius had Germanicus killed? How horrible. Like, she's just like, now all the legates are on her side. They're like, yeah, we like Germanicus too. Like, oh, and this guy says Tiberius doesn't like you? Well, we like you a lot. Like, one of those. And then, you know, Lucius, he obviously is losing this fight. They're not going to arrest her. They're friends with her now. So he pulls a dagger on her, and the legates are like, bitch, no. And so they kill him. So, like, problem solved. Like, she just sweet talked a bunch of legates for a minute. And then, you know, Lucius is stupid and impetuous. So he gets stabbed by the cops, and the cops are like, nah, no one's gonna find that body. I don't give a shit. Like, they're just like, no one gives a shit that Lucius is dead, basically. They're like, fuck that guy. He liked Tiberius. This was like, I thought gonna be a much bigger plot point than it ended up being, but it was just really quick. So, you know, fuck Lucius. No one gives a shit that he's dead. So now that problem's solved, she goes home with Flavius, who's like, you know, taking care of her. And she goes home, and there's this guy in her living room, and it's Marius! He's back! He was the hooded figure in the temple. And this is post-vampire Marius, too, because obviously he's speaking telepathically to her. So now it's Marius and Pandora back together again. But Marius, he's like, Pandora, you were so badass and cool. You were the best. I saw how you dealt with your idiot brother. Like, I was gonna deal with it, but I wasn't necessary because you're so cool. And also, like, I really care about you, and this beef jerky blood drinker ain't no joke. Like, you should get out of town. Like, this is not cool. If you're having dreams about this shit, you need to leave. Because, like, yikes. And she's like, no, I'm not just gonna leave town. I just got here, first of all. And second of all, you need to give me some information. Like, I'm just not gonna leave and not know anything. Like, obviously, this is new. You are obviously not human anymore. I can tell. Like, fucking duh. And secondly, like, why are my dreams connected to this? Why am I involved? Like, I need to understand shit. And Marius won't tell her anything. So she's like, fine. I guess I'm staying then, and if this beef jerky vampire shows up, I'm just gonna deal with it my goddamn self, Marius. Suck my dick. So, you know, Marius isn't winning this argument, so he ends up leaving. She goes to bed. She has, like, more crazy dreams about Isis, and like being attacked, and they scare her. Isis starts speaking to her more in the dreams, and she freaks out about it. She wakes up, she grabs some parchment, and she writes down everything that happened in the dreams. It's like a really elaborate thing. She's like, all right, I'm gonna roll it up, and I'm gonna bring it to the temple, because then they have like a full thing, an account of what happened in my dream. So she goes to the temple, right? And she goes, hey, here's this scroll. I wrote down my dreams that I saw. And they're like, lady, we can't read this. It's written in cuneiform. We don't read ancient Egyptian. And she's like, I wrote it in Latin. And they're like, bitch, these are pictures. Like, apparently she's now writing in ancient Egyptian and she doesn't know the language. And in her mind, she's thinking and writing in Latin, but it's coming out as cuneiform. So like, she is freaked out for obvious reasons. And no one can tell her what's up. No one can read the documents. She can read them too because she wrote them. But now she's reading cuneiform and she's like, I don't know how this works. So you know what? She puts on her detective hat and she's like, I've got some splaining to do. So she goes around town looking for people, like other scholarly like bookstores that like specialize in Egyptian literature. She just kind of casually brings up Marius at them. Like, oh, you know, is this what Marius was asking about? And like most of them are like, who the fuck's Marius, lady? And she's like, oh, never mind. And then the last one she goes to, and she's like, oh, Marius? And he's like, yeah, what about Marius? And she's like, jackpot. And she's like, oh my gosh, Marius, isn't he the best? Like, are you saving any scrolls for him? Because I have a scroll for him. Can I show you my scroll? And then like, you can show me what you're saving for him. And he's like, okay. So he takes the scroll and he's like, wow, this is in really good condition. She's like, I know, I wrote it. And he's like, what? You write cuneiform? And she's like, apparently. And so he starts showing her some other scrolls and stuff. And she goes, all right, well, thanks for your help. Like now she knows where Marius gets stuff. She can like track him down. And he's like, yeah, or do you want to just take it to his house for him? And she's like, oh, you know where Marius lives? And he's like, yeah, he lives like blah, blah, blah. And he tells him how to get to his house. And she's like, Flavius, grab the scrolls. We're going to Marius's house. Mind you, it's daytime. So now she's on the trail of Marius. She's like, okay, I'm going to track him down. He's going to tell me what's going on. So she goes into Marius's house. She gets there. The gate's closed, obviously. And she's like pounding on the gate. And she's like, let me in. I got to see Marius. The two little boys are like, we're not allowed to let people in. And she's like, I don't care, I'm coming in. So she like climbed Marius's fence, leaves Flavius outside because he has a fake leg. He can't climb a fence. She's like, just be a lookout. Like if the beef jerky vampire shows up, like just stab him a bunch. I don't know. Like she's not really planning ahead that far. And so now that she's broken into his house, she just kind of like, all right, I guess I'll take a nap because I didn't sleep well last night. So she just hangs out at their house and the boys are all freaked out. They're like, Marius is going to be so mad at us. And she's like, bros, like he reads minds. Like he'll know that you didn't do this. Like he'll be mad at me. Just chill. She wakes up from her nap and the sun has set. And she's like, okay, great. If the sun's down, Marius will show up. He doesn't come out during the sunlight. But nope, Marius doesn't show up. Beef jerky vampire shows up and attacks her and he like drinks a bunch of her blood and she's like trying to fight him off. Finally, Marius shows up and he's like, hey, beef jerky, you better get before I make you. Get out of my house. And he's like, no, I'm going to use Pandora so I can force you to bring me to Akasha and I can drink some of her blood and get like unbeef jerkied. And he's like, all right, if you want to fuck around and find out, let's go see Akasha then. See, this is the part where beef jerky should have like rethought his life choices because if someone's just like, fine, let's go see her then, you should be wondering why he's so actively wanting you to go see her. Like, this is step one. Beef jerky doesn't do that. He's like, all right, great, let's go see Akasha. So they go down into the chamber, like underneath the house where he keeps them because Marius has been their keeper for some time. And Pandora gets brought along because she's literally dying because beef jerky like drank almost all of her blood. Since Pandora is dying, Marius ends up giving her his blood to save her. He's basically turning her into a vampire. He never wanted to turn her into a vampire, but she's literally dying. So he turns her into a vampire in this moment. And this is when she finally like sees like a statue version of Akasha, who she has been seeing as Isis, and she's having a full religious experience. Mind you, she's turning into a vampire and seeing her goddess at the same time. It's a lot. Like she's going through a lot of like revelations right now. And she's also telling Marius, like, don't save me, protect the goddess, save Isis. You gotta protect her. And like he's like, she's good. Because you know what? Akasha doesn't need saving. Beef jerky comes up trying to drink her blood and she's just like, no. She's maybe a statue, but she still moves when she wants to. So she just like crushes beef jerky head throws the body away. She's like, I'm done with you. And she like sets it on fire. So like beef jerky's handled. You know, like it wasn't that hard of a scene. Like all these things I think are going to be longer scenes end up being very short. So beef jerky is dealt with. And Pandora's like kind of arising as a vampire, and she's just like overjoyed. She's seeing Akasha, her Isis, and she's been calling out to her in dreams. They've been communicating. Like she's just so happy that she's finally meeting like her goddess. And Akasha, she like beckons Pandora close and like embraces her, and then she has Pandora drink her blood. So like, wow, this is 0 to 60. Like Marius hasn't been a vampire for that long at this period, maybe like 15 years. So he's a rather young vampire. And then she's going from like young vampire blood to like the most ancient vampire blood. Hot damn, she's having a morning. But after she drinks Akasha's blood, she and Marius go back upstairs and they have themselves a little vampire wedding. They drink each other's blood. They actually have sex in this because, I mean, Marius isn't super into it, but like she wants to. So he's like, all right. And, you know, because vampires don't really have sex in Anne Rice's world. I mean, they're capable of it. They just don't usually do it. It doesn't really do anything for them, but whatever. So there's a whole wedding night. And Marius is actually really happy because he's always, like, loved Pandora. I mean, it was weird when she was 10, but now she's 35 and this is normal. So we're going with it. He's just really happy that he finally gets to be with Pandora. Like, he's having a good time. And Pandora kind of bursts his bubble a little bit because she's like, yeah, you know, it was Akasha's plan. She called me here because she wanted me to stay with you so you would be happy. And like, Marius is not happy to hear this because Pandora learned this when she was drinking Akasha's blood. He didn't know Akasha was planning this. Basically, like, it makes Pandora into a trap baby because, you know, Marius had been getting sick of like dealing with them, and he was tired of being a vampire. He was having like those vampire suicidal thoughts, and so Akasha went and found him a vampire bride to have him stay alive and take care of them. She's manipulating him. So he needs a minute to get his head on straight after knowing that. And so Pandora's like, all right. And she goes and she brings Flavius in finally because he's been just outside the gates this whole time. Just like standing there, I guess. So she finally brings him in and he was so worried about her. She's like, I'm good. And she's like, I can tell you're not human. Like, I don't know like how immediately he can tell, but I guess like he's so devoted to her, like he immediately knows his differences. And he's just like, are you sure you're okay? And she's like, I am fantastic. And he's like, okay, still loyal. And she's like, cool, guess what? We're all moving in with Marius. We're married now. So she's like, go home, go get me and Leah and all of my stuff, pack it all up. We're moving in. And he's like, all right. Pandora and Marius are actually kind of happy to be together. Like, is Marius upset that Akasha like planned this? Yeah, but he's still more so happy that he gets to be with Pandora now. So, you know, overall it's kind of a happy ending. However, that being said, it's not the happiest of marriages. Like, they love each other, but Pandora is just, you can't tell Pandora nothing. She's very strong-willed, and Marius has a tendency to be domineering. They're just butting heads a lot of the time. Like, if you tell Pandora not to do something, that's the first thing she's gonna do. So it's one of those situations. And like, here's a prime example of it. Like a few years go by, they've been living happily, and Flavius is still with them, and he gets really sick, and like he's gonna die sick. And Marius goes out for a bit because he reads in Flavius's brain that Flavius doesn't want him there to watch him like suffer like this. So Marius is gonna leave. And as soon as Marius leaves, Pandora's like, hey Flavius, you want to be a vampire? I'll fix this. And he's like, yeah. And she's like, okay. So she makes him a vampire like immediately once he leaves, knowing full well Marius does not want to make any more vampires. Marius gets home and he's just like, I left you alone for 2 hours. What the fuck? So Marius is so mad, and Flavius ends up leaving to go off on his own adventures, and we don't really ever hear from him again. I wish we did, but he just kind of wanders off now that he's a vampire, I guess. And another like point of contention in their marriage is that Pandora is also very much into like scholarly pursuits and the arts and being a part of the world. She likes, you know, hearing about all the new going on in her environment. And to give you a time period here, like one day Pandora is in the town square, and she goes and listens to the Apostle Paul like telling about Jesus. This is the dawn of Christianity. Like, this is old. This is a long time ago. And Marius, he just keeps secluding himself more and more from the outside world. He's like checking out. He's hitting that vampire wall where you need to decide to either buck up or give up. And he's kind of leaning more towards give up right now. And they're very different personalities, just adds all this tension between them. And honestly, it just stays like kind of this tense butting heads, but they love each other type of situation for like 200 years. So they don't really say anything else about it besides, you know, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire happens and beyond. And eventually one day they have this really big fight, and Pandora just like, fuck you, Marius, and she leaves for like 3 days. She's like, I need a break. However, this ended up being a miscalculation because now that she left for 3 days, Marius just assumed she's not coming back, and he leaves. He packs up the whole house. He takes Ankiel and Akasha, bones out. She comes back 3 days later and everything's gone. Oh my gosh, kind of a dick move, Marius. And then Pandora just waits there for like 6 months or so, just thinking he's gonna come back, and he doesn't. So she's like, well, I guess I should just leave Antioch too. And then they kind of, you know, just part ways for like 400 years. The next time they meet up, it's like in the 1600s. They're at like a fancy ass party. And this is after the Armand era with Marius, because Armand was changed in like 1599. And this is like the 1600s. So right after the Armand era. And they reunite, and it's all like, oh my gosh, I love you and stuff. And Marius is like, oh, you should stay with me. And she's like, I can't. There's this other vampire that's like, I'm with, and I can't leave. And then she freaks out about it, and she writes him this letter saying, please come to Moscow. That's where this other vampire's taking me. He's controlling me. I need help. Come rescue me. I want to be with you. She sends him this letter. However, he never gets the letter, so he never comes to save her. And I guess eventually she did get away from that other vampire she was with. They don't tell how she got away from him, but time went on again, and the next time that Marius and Pandora met, it was 1985, during the whole when Akasha rose up and was like planning world domination and genocide. So there was that whole thing, and she basically, you know, she finds Marius, rescues him out of his ice fortress. That whole job. And then she's kind of like, yeah, and I was around during like Tale of the Body Thief, and around during Memnoch the Devil, but I wasn't a big part of it, la la la, whatever. And this is kind of the end of the story. And through writing her own story, it's basically kind of reinvigorated her, where now she's like, I think I want to try to love the world again. Because in the beginning of the book, when we meet her, she's so like melancholy and she's going through the motions for like a lot of things in life. And now finally she's like, you know, like, I think I want to try again. Like, I think I like the world again. Thanks for making me write down my story, David. You're a real mensch. So she leaves like the notebooks for him at the cafe in Paris where they met originally. And she's like, hey, guess what? I'm going to New Orleans to go check on Lestat because he's in a coma. This is happening during the end of Memnoch the Devil. And she's like, meet me there. We'll like catch up. XOXO Pandora. Like one of those. And then after this book is where the events of like the vampire Armand happen. All right, so that was Pandora. Like I said, it's kind of a short story just about Pandora's origin. And I liked it overall. I don't really, you know, it's just a story. It's not really adding anything to the Vampire Chronicles. It's just kind of like a detour. So it was fun. I mean, I'm glad I read it. I enjoyed it overall. It's fine. Let me know in the comments down below. I don't know. What's another vampire from the Vampire Chronicles that you don't know much about that you would love to know more about them? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like, and if you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. Also, if you want cool exclusive content, including a book club and early access to videos, you can consider becoming a channel member or a patron. The links for that are in the description down below. And on that note, I will see you guys soon. And bye!